Dr. Damian Goldbar, and I'm here today with Eva Hirsch-Pontes, and our goal is to talk about what is coaching supervision and the differences between coaching supervision, coaching, and mentor coaching. So, Eva, if you had to define coaching supervision, how would you define it for people who are not familiar with what is it?
Hi, I would say it's a practice of reflecting on our own practice. So we have someone who is trained to help us see through different lenses how we are working as coaches and how our own way of being impacts our professional practice.
Yeah, so I would add to that when we are working on supervision, what we are doing is reflecting on our work, what we happen with our client. Sometimes we use a model from Peter Hawkins called the 7I model, where we in supervision look at what is the client, what is the coach brings a client to discuss, to coaching supervision, what's happening with the client, what are the interventions of the coach, what does the coach do during the coaching practice, how is the relationship between the coach and the client. And also we look in the system not only between coach and client, but also between coach and supervisor. And sometimes some dynamics repeat. What happened between the coach and client repeats also in the relationship between the coach and supervisor. We call that parallel process.
Yeah. So this is one of the lenses that I said that we can use to help us reflect on our work as a coach. And from what you've mentioned, I'd like to highlight a few words that you've used. So the first thing is that in supervision, we have a lot of focus on the relationship established in the wider system. So we're looking at the system and we're looking at the several relationships that take place inside that system. And that's very valuable for the coach and also at the end of the day, also for the client, because then the coach can have someone to help him think or help her think how to be more effective with that client.
Yeah. So there is a part that is about effectiveness, working with our client. There is a part about looking at ourselves as coaches too.
Yes.
How the personal may intrude into the professional, who we're being as coaches working with our client. So it's also reflecting on what is happening to us, what are our reactions, what are our emotional reactions in these relationships. So to the extent that we can explore that, we can look into some of the blind spots that we may not be seeing.
Yeah. For instance, perhaps being a bit more practical might help. For instance, sometimes we as coaches can find that we have a pattern of behaving in certain situations with a certain kind of client. And it is helpful to think what makes us react in that manner and create that pattern in those situations. What is it in us that leads us to behave in that manner? Of course, as supervisors, we are also coaches, so we will use coach-like language, a coach-like approach, but differently from coaching, we don't ask for a specific measurable outcome from the coach who is being supervised, because the outcome is the reflection in itself. And that is understood. That's part of the relationship. So we will ask what is the topic of today, and the client, in this case the coach, may say, well, I'd like to reflect on a pattern that I have discovered, or might say, I'm struggling with a certain client and I'd like to reflect on that. Or sometimes I'd like to reflect on ethical boundaries that I may be facing, but the goal is reflection in itself and is not moving to action. It's more reflection to transform the practice. So that would be number one difference.
The idea is that through coaching supervision, there is a benefit for the coach, but also for the client and for the system that they are part of.
Yeah. In the coaching supervision, what we will find and what we are looking at is patterns that are repeating themselves in the system. For instance, if a coach is working with a client who is feeling judged, the coach himself might become judgmental. It does happen. We notice that. So some patterns that will repeat themselves in the system. So we are looking as supervisors at this wider system and what happens and is repeated in those systems.
Yeah. So I want to reinforce that idea of reflection and maybe looking at the situation, supervision, putting some distance from what's going on and reflecting on what's happening. Sometimes some metaphors help to do, like a drone that is observing the situation, a fly on the wall, or different metaphors that help us to look into what's happening in working with our clients. Anything else you want to add, I think?
Yes, for those of you who are watching us and who are coaches, I would add that we do use all the 11 ICF competencies, for instance, but perhaps creating awareness in the case of supervision has a bigger portion of the session instead of, for instance, designing goals and moving to action. So that would be also another way of looking at it.
Yeah. And I would add also to that coaching presence, because who you are is how you coach, who you are is how you supervise, and being aware of who you are as self as instrument, because in coaching and in supervision, how we are aware of who we are being and how we are relating to our clients is key. And in coaching supervision, you have the opportunity to look into that yourself as an instrument working with your client. And maybe we want to also differentiate between coaching supervision and mentor coaching. The International Coach Federation divide and specifically define mentor coaching as working with coaches on their skills, on their abilities, so they can develop skills as a coach. This is what you were talking, Eva. I see core competencies. So basically, the mentor coach listen or observe the coach working with clients and then provide feedback, applying the 11 core competency model, seeing what are the competencies that are developed and which ones need to be more development.
Yes. So a good way of summarizing this is mentor coaching will focus on what the coach is doing in his practice, and supervision will focus on who the coach is being in his practice.
I think this is a great way to summarize and to wrap up our brief explanation of what is coaching supervisions and the difference between mentor coaching and coaching. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach us and ask us any questions you may have.
Bye.